Hey, this is Larry Reisman here with TCPalm, and welcome to the TCPalm editorial board meeting to interview candidates for Indian River County Sheriff. I'm joined by fellow editorial board members Adam Neal, our editor and news director, Gil Smart, columnist, and Luis Philippine and Terry Schlitt, reader advisory board members. Rich Roselle, he's one of the candidates. He's on the line with me on my cell phone and is listening to this. We had an issue getting him into the broadcast today. We also have the other four candidates, Eric Flowers, Chuck Kirby, and Keith Touchberry. I'll lead the questioning and open it up to other editorial board members at the end. Adam will direct the video coverage, and if we get questions from our social media audience, he might decide to pose one or two at the end of the session. Thank you for streamlining this process by completing questionnaires ahead of time. Board members have reviewed all of your answers, which can be found at tcpalm.com/elections, along with other stories, videos, and information about the August 18 election. At the conclusion of this interview, editorial board members will discuss possibly writing an editorial to recommend a candidate in the race. We got several questions for you today, and we might end up having more of a conversation than just a simple Q&A. Our goal is to be completed in 60 to 75 minutes. Because of time constraints, we ask that you keep your answers concise and be respectful of others. I'm going to try to go in alphabetical order here. So we'll start off the questioning with Eric. Eric, can you talk about the three most important, what are the three most important roles of sheriff?
Excuse me?
What are the three most important roles of sheriff?
For me, the three most important roles of sheriff are absolutely protecting our community, ensuring that everyone in our community is safe. And then, of course, beyond that is really a community outreach role and being there for our community when they need us. People don't just call us on a good day. People don't call the sheriff's office because they're having a great day. They call us because it's the worst day of their life or because they're having a terrible day. And so we've always subscribed to a philosophy of know us before you need us. So the community outreach piece for me is probably the second most important. Of course, being there as a law enforcement entity is the safety piece, the safety component, knowing that we're keeping everybody safe. And then the third most important thing is to ensure that we're protecting the rights of everyone inside of whether they're guests or whether they're residents, protecting their rights and their constitutional rights, making sure that they're safe.
Thank you, Eric. Chuck, would you like to go next? What are the three biggest roles of sheriff?
Absolutely. Actually, I can pull it right off of the Sheriff's Office mission statement. I spent 26 and a half years at the Sheriff's Office, and we've listed the big three already that we've lived by for several years now. The first is to protect our community. The second is to prevent crimes. And the third is to solve problems. So I'll leave it short there. I know you've got longer questions to answer, but that's the three most important.
Thanks, Chuck. I appreciate it. Rich, what are the three most important things at the Sheriff's Office?
Sir, can you hear me, Larry?
Yes.
You tested before you couldn't.
Yep, we're good.
Service, without a doubt, police officers take an oath, which they should renew periodically to protect the public and to serve the best of their ability. And so service to the public is the reason why a police department or a sheriff's department exists. The second is transparency. If the public cannot trust what comes out of the sheriff's office, then no matter what they do with the first one, they're going to fail at every turn. The agency has to be transparent in every aspect of what it does. And then lastly, if the workforce is not happy, healthy, and safe, they will not be able to fulfill their first goal as well. So you have to treat the workforce properly, make sure that they have everything that they need and some of what they want in order to achieve the first two goals.
Thank you, Rich. Keith.
So absolutely, I'm a fan of the old statement, mission first, people always. And we can't accomplish our mission as law enforcement officers unless we take care of our people always. But the three most important things facing a sheriff, first and foremost, is supporting, protecting, and defending the Constitution of the United States and also all of our constitutional rights. Protecting our community from harm would be the second one, and ultimately maintaining the public trust. And if we don't do the aforementioned, and we don't conduct ourselves in a manner that is in keeping with our role in society, then we are not going to maintain the public trust. And that's something that is lacking currently with the Indian River County Sheriff's Office. Thank you.
Okay, so we'll start off with Chuck, and it's basically a follow-up question. When you talked about those three earlier, can you grade each of the three with a grade from A to F?
Grade each of the three missions of the sheriff's office?
Yes.
Oh, absolutely. I think that, I mean, because we're talking about the rank and file guys, that, you know, the gentlemen that actually respond every day. We're talking about the correctional officers that work in our jail and keep prisoners safe, and we're also talking about our dispatchers. So I think, yeah, in running down that list, and I'll hit the list again, so that'll make it a little bit easier, I think. If protect the community, I think the sheriff's office does a phenomenal job at that. I think there's no issues whatsoever. I think that we see that every day in the media releases for the responses they've had. I think preventing crimes, probably a B, to be quite honest. I mean, I've talked pretty considerably about the crime rate and the clearance rates for the sheriff's office in comparison, and I try to compare them directly to other sheriff's offices. So right now, probably a B on the prevention of crimes, and then solving problems, probably as well, probably a B. I think that we have some issues. Certainly we have some neighborhoods where it's considerably lower because we've lost some of that level of trust in some of our neighborhoods throughout the community. So, but I'll stay at a B there as well. I don't see any reason to go below.
Okay, Rich, you're up next on that. Please grade the three areas you mentioned before with a letter grade.
Okay, in the area of public service and commitment to the oath that the deputies take, I have to split it into two. I would rate the deputies themselves as an A. They do their job every day in, day out, in bad conditions that are getting worse, shorthanded. Maybe they don't have the right equipment that they have, but they still go out every day. They do their job. I grade them an A. But as far as the administration goes, I can't grade them any higher than a D. Yeah, I think they fail the deputies at just about every turn that I've seen, which is one of the reasons why I'm running. If I didn't think it was opposite of that, I wouldn't be running. The second was the transparency, and which builds on the public trust, and strictly for a couple of reasons. First, the lack of public trust that exists with the administration of the sheriff's office, not the deputies themselves, the administration of the sheriff's office. It shouldn't be at a level as low as it is. As far as the deputies go, I think the public does trust the deputies, but they're only as good as their leaders. And I'll just throw this one in. It's a broken record for everybody who's heard me. The fact that the sheriff's office is paying an outside attorney to avoid complying with the public records law is abominable. But again, throwing in the deputies into the mix with these three, I would rate them at a C, but only because of the deputies. Otherwise, they'd get an F. Now, the last point that I made about how to treat the workforce, I don't think anybody could argue that they are at an F, and they should be happy that they got graded that high. The Sheriff's Department administration had a chance to negotiate a contract with, but instead decided that it was just going to take it to impasse and let somebody else rule on it. So this way they could just point their finger at somebody else, and that's not leadership. Leadership is doing whatever for as long as you need. Am I going too long, Larry?
No, you're good. Keep going.
Okay. Doing whatever you need for as long as it needs to come to an agreement. You can't come to impasse with the public. You have to solve their problems and you have to solve their issues. But with your workforce, it's okay to take that to impasse because you don't feel like dealing with what they want. That's abominable, and I give them an F.
Okay, what about the administration? Did you say a D as in dog or a B as in boy?
Which one are we talking about?
Earlier you talked about administration. You started off with deputies. You gave them an A.
D's and dog, Larry.
Okay, thank you. Okay, Keith?
Okay.
So again, the overriding philosophy is mission first, people always. We can't accomplish our mission in law enforcement unless we take care of our people always. And that applies to everything tangible and intangible that they're looking for in their careers: salary, benefit, transfer opportunities, and so forth. But most importantly, how you treat them, how they feel when they come to work. Do they feel a sense of value, a sense of worth, a sense of belonging? And ultimately, do they feel like their competencies are being developed? So all of that happens at the same time. But to rate those three from A to C, we have to put maintaining the public trust as the number one responsibility. It is our primary responsibility to maintain the public trust. And everything that we do or fail to do as law enforcement officers either enhances and grows that trust or it erodes that trust. And so we must have good community relations to maintain public trust. We must be transparent in everything we do. We must have clear and consistent policies in everything that we do, from how we promote, how we train, and ultimately how we discipline. Because if we don't do that, then what's going to happen in our organizations is the men and women are going to feel like there's favoritism, which they do, and the manner in which decisions are made is not fair, impartial, or consistent, and they're going to become fragmented as an organization. And they will not be able to perform their duties in the manner that they're supposed to perform them, so that we maintain the public trust. And I will give you three things to look at as indicators of leadership: morale, proficiency, and esprit de corps. If their morale is low, and if they're not as proficient in their duties as they should be, and if their overall esprit de corps is lacking, their camaraderie, they're leaving, they're not a tight-knit, close-knit unit, then we have poor leadership to blame. And that's what we have over there from the executive level at the Indian River County Sheriff's Office. And all that will contribute to whether or not we're able to maintain the public trust. Secondly is basically protecting constitutional rights and defending and supporting the Constitution of the United States of America. If we do not do that, again, we will not be able to maintain the public trust. People will lose faith in us. They will think that we're here taking away their rights when we're supposed to be safeguarding their rights. And finally, protecting our community from harm. And I put that last, even though that is what we get paid to do, but I elevate those other two above that, because if we're not doing those things, then we are not going to have a job protecting and serving. And I can cite 3 police departments in the state of Florida since 2011 that were disbanded by their city councils as a result of people who have lost faith and trust in their police departments. And you just can't do that with the sheriff's office. You can do that with a police department, but you can't do that with the sheriff's office. You have to get a new sheriff in there who's going to ensure that those 3 priorities are maintained all the time.
So Keith, just real quick, Keith, just a letter grade. The current Indian River County Sheriff's Office protects its trust. A, B, C, D, E, F.
Maintain the public trust is A.
A, okay. And then the
safeguard, protect the Constitution and our rights is B, and C is to protect our community from harm.
okay, well, that's the letter grade you would give them?
Yes. Well, as far as where I rank them in order or how well they're doing.
How well they're doing.
How well they're doing. I say they're going to get a C or a D on all 3.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
Eric.
So I know that taking a lot of shots at our current administration, and I think I have to at least address that. I would challenge you and anyone and anybody who's out there listening to talk to the deputy sheriffs, talk to the folks that are actually out there on patrol, and ask them their feelings, whether or not they feel that they have the support of the agency, whether or not they feel that they have the support of the administration, and what's available to them. But I would specifically say from my items that I spoke of, that for me, I feel like on safety, we're probably doing about a B. And I'd love to see that raised up. And that's certainly something that my goal as your sheriff will be, is to increase that feeling of safety. We still see people moving to Indian River County regularly. We see people moving here to bring their businesses here. We see people fleeing the north at great numbers. And there's a reason for that. And it's because Indian River County is a very special place. It's a place that I'm comfortable raising my family, and I feel safe telling people my address. I feel safe telling people where I live. And I feel like we have a safe community and a place that I feel comfortable with my wife going out to the grocery store. Having said that, we have seen recent events like the shooting at Walmart, like several other things that have happened in this year in 2020, and even more recently. 2019, 2018, where there's concerns. And so my goal as sheriff is to step in and ensure that everyone in our community feels safe when they go out, when they leave their homes, and when they're out and about in our community. We have a beautiful community, and safety is paramount if we want to continue to have people continue to live here and not flee for other areas. As far as community outreach goes, I'm very proud of the community outreach that we've done up to today. I know that I've served on several boards. I know that other members of the agency have served on local nonprofit boards. We're constantly working with United Way. We're working with the Florida Sheriff's Youth Ranches. We have our fingers in so many different outreach organizations, and we're on the ground talking to these different organizations daily, as well as the community in general. And so I'm proud of our community outreach. I would give us an A on that one, but I want it to be an A+. And I feel like for it to be an A+, we have to go even further. We have to take our deputies and encourage them to participate in Big Brothers and Big Sisters. And we've done that. But my goal as sheriff is to, you guys know how much I care about nonprofits and how integral they are to the operations of the sheriff's office. I want to be able to see our people, maybe give them a few hours a week as part of their schedule to step in and maybe coach a team, or maybe be a part of these Big Brothers organizations and be there for the community, because I believe that the taxpayers recognize the value of that, and that they will see rewards on the other side of it with the relationships that we build along the way as community servants, not just in a policing role, but in just a positive interaction with people in our community. I feel like we've done a good job, but we've got more to do. As far as protecting people's constitutional rights, it's something that we strive for every day. It's part of our oath. We want to make sure that people feel safe and comfortable interacting with the police. They want to know that we're not conducting illegal searches, and that we're treating them as fairly and exactly the same way that we would want to be treated. It's something that we are very concerned about, and something that me as your future sheriff will surely add additional training to our folks. We're always tweaking and adjusting our training as needs are, as things come up. And so for me, constitutional rights are very important, and I want to make sure that our folks are focused on that. And again, I'd probably give us an A- on that, something that we need to work on a little bit more, but there's always room to be better.
Thanks, Eric. We'll start with Rich on this one. Please address the process of, or lack thereof, of succession planning in the sheriff's office. If you were elected, how would you handle matters?
Larry, I would handle it the same way I have in other places where I've been in charge. I'm the only candidate in this race that's been in charge of 3 municipal agencies, and it came from a very large organization and held many command positions there. And in every single position that I held, and there aren't any that exceptions, they were a mess when I got to them. And one of the messes that I had to clean up was the fact that the supervisor, the manager, or the leader did not have a plan for anybody but him or herself. When they were there, they were king, they were the focus, and when they left, they really didn't much care what happened. So in every position I've ever been in, one of the first things I had to do was create and mentor people to take over for me, because I knew I was never going to be in one spot forever. So we'll go backwards, and if I run out of time, it just suffice what I have to say now. But where I am right now, there was no succession plan when I got there. I was given the opportunity to either mentor one of the people in my agency to take over after me, and in mentoring him, I would have to come up with a pretty good plan, or just wait it out, and when I was done, we could go back to the outside to get another person, because it wasn't by accident they brought somebody in from way, way outside into this organization. Well, the easiest thing in the world is for any leader to sit with his feet up on a desk and say, I'm not going to waste the time of creating a succession plan when all I have to do is just wait my term, and then when I'm done, wave goodbye. That's not what I did. I mentored my replacement, and I mentored my replacements probably 3 levels down. My goal was to have 15 years worth of police chiefs and public safety directors ready to go by the time I left. And I can say right now that I do have that. We have to fine tune a couple of them, but I have people mentored all the way down to the acting sergeant level, between schooling and tests that I've given them and other things that I've done. They're ready to go. And it's the same every place that I've ever been. Two jobs ago, I took over an agency that they had a captain and a bunch of sergeants, and a couple of weeks after I got hired, the captain quit because I refused to just summarily promote him. So think about that, a 40-some-odd member agency with me, and then the closest rank to me were sergeants who left 3 in one shot. I had to completely rebuild a police organization. Not to just rebuild it for today, I had to rebuild it for tomorrow. That agency now currently went from the laughing stock of Union County, New Jersey, to the place where everybody wants to be. I am the person who can point to what he has done in the past to tell you what I will do in the future, unlike anybody else in this race. I've done this before, and I already know what needs to be done.
Thanks, Rich. Keith, would you like me to repeat the question?
No, it's about succession planning and how would I address that in the agency?
Yes, and if you have an example of how you've done it in the past, yeah.
Sure, absolutely. So before I do that, I just want to clarify a statement I made earlier when you were asking me to how grade the sheriff's office. And I think they do a good job about protecting constitutional rights and enforcing the law. So I want to be very clear on that. And I've said on many occasions that the sheriff's office is full of many great men and women who do a great job every day and who are very heroic, as we have seen recently in that shooting. But they just want good leadership. And in response to candidate Flowers, I have spoken to the men and women of that organization because I've had 31 years of relationships with past and present members of that organization. And I talk to them on a regular basis. And they do not paint the same picture that you're painting for the viewers here in this broadcast. So I just want to be clear on that. Secondly, I'd like to talk then about succession planning because it's something that we do regularly. It's probably the most important part of leadership. You know, we all have to be humble and remember we put our pants on one leg at a time. And at some point in time, we're going to leave and someone's going to have to take our place. But as the sheriff's office is concerned, the voters determine who takes that person's place. We can prepare someone to take over for us, but it's up to the people to determine if that person is truly prepared through the succession plan that has been in place in that organization. And I've been very critical about that with the Indian River County Sheriff's Office. As a matter of fact, I've said that it is more of a personal loyalty-based leadership culture. Now, there have been some people who have gotten ahead truly because of their talent and ability, and that's commendable. But the vast majority from what I see and what I hear from members of the organization is it's more or less based on personal loyalty. And a lot of people call that a good old boy system. And that's exactly what it is. And it's something we have to end right here in Indian River County. And it begins with this election. And so what we do is we have to have a fair, impartial, and consistent process to elevate people in rank at that organization or for lateral transfer positions should they choose to do that. And it starts in the beginning when we hire them. We do have to have a mentoring program in place. It's something that I implemented at a state level when I approached the Criminal Justice Standards and Training Commission in the spring of 2018 and appealed to the CJSTC on the fact that we do not have any formal mentoring training in the state of Florida for law enforcement officers. And if we did, then we would be able to satisfactorily, immerse them in the culture of organizations and train them and mentor them and grow them as professional law enforcement officers. So it begins with hiring, and then it transfers into the field training program where we ensure that they are learning the things that they need to learn, but most importantly, the values of the organization and how they're supposed to be applied in every decision that they make. And so that they don't make bad decisions. And we have to make sure that they surround themselves with people who are going to help them along the way grow professionally and as well. And so from mentoring, then we take it to lateral transfer assignments. A lot of these deputies think that they want to go into one assignment or the other. So if we can create, and we will create a program where if they work in booking, then think they want to do prisoner transport. Well, let's try them out there a little bit and let's rotate people around a little bit so they get an understanding. And I'm a firm believer that if you do that, they'll see the reality because there's no greater learning than experiential learning. And they'll see the reality of what it means to work in a different unit. And they may decide that it's not for them. And guess what? We check that off the box. They're a little more relaxed and settled down. They've grown a little bit. And we can continue to develop them along the way in their careers. We have to provide training for them along the way. We have to send them to advanced schooling. We have to send them to finishing schools like the Southern Police Institute, the FBI National Academy, or the Police Executive Research Forum. You know, these higher level education programs that exist for command level officers. But most importantly, we have to task the men and women under our charge with the assignments that are going to develop them. we have to allow them to make mistakes, and we have to be there for them when they do, so that we can continue to help them grow and mold and shape as professional law enforcement officers. And I think that's the key part there, because mistakes are a growth process. And when they make them, we have to look at it. Well, did they do it because they lack either the knowledge or the ability or the desire to do the right thing? And then we counsel, coach, or correct appropriately, or discipline if that's what's necessary. So once we do that, we put that in place, then we will develop future leaders for the organization. But I go back to what I said in the beginning. It's up to the people to determine who becomes the next sheriff. And you can have the best succession plan in place, but unless the people believe that that's who needs to be in there, and they believe in the organization and trust, then that may not be the person that they're going to elect. And as far as how we've done it, with nearly 25 years with the Vero Beach Police Department, working my way up through the ranks, one rank at a time, significant time in the saddle, each rung along the way, molding, shaping, growing, developing people, participating in policy implementation that does that. And then as a chief of police, developing my replacement, if that's what the city manager wants, by sending him to advanced training school, sending him to the Southern Police Institute Administrative Officer School, and giving him those assignments that help grow and develop him along the way. And that's how you do it.
Thanks, Keith. I appreciate it. Eric?
Thank you, Larry. I can tell you that I went to the sheriff in 2012, and I told him that when he was ready to retire, I wanted to replace him. And Sheriff Lohr has held up that standard. He has mentored me along the way, and I can tell you that I have mentored people as I've come up through the ranks. Chief Touchberry spoke about moving people around and them trying in other areas. I can tell you that that's something that we do regularly at the Indian River County Sheriff's Office. We have deputies assigned to road patrol who on training days assist in our criminal investigations unit. They assist in our undercover operations. They assist in our aviation unit. We move people around and give them opportunities so that when we do have an opening, we're prepared to fill that opening with somebody that we're comfortable, that we know that they have the drive and the skills to do those things. We haven't put somebody in canine who didn't spend their own time out there catching dogs, being bitten, and being part of that unit in decades. That's just part of the process. And so from my perspective, the Indian River County Sheriff's Office does a good job of mentoring people, bringing them through the ranks, getting people prepared for whatever their next step is. And I got to tell you, I've come through the agency. I started as a deputy sheriff. I worked road patrol. I worked undercover. I worked as a detective. And all along the way, I made great relationships with my sergeants and lieutenants. And I still look up to those people, regardless of what my rank is. I regularly go to them for advice. I ask them for help. And because of those relationships, it's why I'm going to be a great sheriff for Indian River County. I can tell you that, coming in from the outside, we've experienced that many times at the Indian River County Sheriff's Office since 1980. And one thing that we know is that successful organizations have people at the top who started at the bottom and worked their way all the way through that organization. I did it when I was a manager at Sam's Club at Walmart. I started out in the parking lot in Sebastian pushing carts, and I worked my way all the way up to having keys to the store in Orlando. So I can tell you that having that experience in the past and doing it again here at the Indian River County Sheriff's Office is going to be great for the people of Indian River County as well as deputies. I've been in their shoes. I've been a deputy working a zone at night in all parts of Indian River County. And, because I've worked my way up through that and I've experienced the county level law enforcement, I feel that, I understand that I've been mentored and brought up the right way. And I feel like we're going to continue to grow that operation, ensuring that our sergeants and our lieutenants, just like I was mentored, will be mentored behind me.
Thanks, Eric. Chuck?
Okay, succession planning at the Sheriff's Office. And I can speak directly to this because I spent a period of time as the strategic planner for the Sheriff's Office. I held that role back right after 9/11 in 2002, when the county as a whole, we were required actually to do succession planning on a county-wide basis. We actually had to, as part of the Regional Domestic Security Task Force, we sat down with those folks locally, the Emergency Management, Department of Health, Fire, and EMS, along with the Sheriff's Office. We got together and we coordinated as far as a continuity of operations and a continuity of government. That was put together in 2002. It was gone up through the Regional Domestic Security Task Force, approved. And then we went back and we looked at it again in 2006 I know in 2006, I was part of the team that looked at it to make sure that we had done it right the first time. I think that it's interesting. I think that several people have made some comments, and I think they're all pretty much right on the mark. The fact is that you have to have some experience in the agency, basically, to move up to the next rung or to move up to the next role in there. I think that with the sheriff's office, I started out as a correctional officer, a correctional deputy in the jail. After 3 years in the jail, basically, I put myself through the crossover academy. I came out and I became a patrol officer. Working up through the ranks, I've had a variety of roles, basically, in that succession, in that preparation. In addition to strategic planner, I was the Homeland Security liaison to all the federal agencies based on my military background. I left there and I became the Deputy Division Commander of Criminal Investigations. After a tour as the Deputy Division Commander of Criminal Investigations, I moved on to our multi-agency drug unit as the director. And at that time, we actually had detectives working from the city of Sebastian and the city of Vero Beach assigned to that drug unit that we worked together. From there, I moved over to judicial services, which is an area that's not common to a police department. Judicial services, although courtroom security is the first thing you think of, I think what some folks lose track of is the fact that we have a constitutional duty as the next sheriff, as far as serving writs, serving process, serving papers, and those things are all the things that are responsibility of the sheriff that are not responsibility of a chief of police. Moving on from there, I went after 5 years of deployment in the military. When I came back, I became a uniform division watch commander. So the watch commander at the sheriff's office, whether it's in corrections or in law enforcement, is that guy that's in charge when the sheriff and the command staff is not there. Working out, that's normally a lieutenant. Sometimes it's a sergeant. We have some great sergeants that have been watch commanders. Moving on from there, I became the special operations lieutenant, where the sheriff's office has a variety of units that some police departments have, some do not, depending on the size of their agency. Our special operations unit's made up of our aviation unit, which is a pretty significant piece to manage. Our school resource, which right now the school resource section is larger than some of our police departments now, because we've grown so large after the Stoneman Douglas issue. The canine, basically the canine unit, fell under special operations, as well as the agricultural and the marine units. So I've had a variety of those experiences in coming up as far as succession planning. I've got a bit of experience in, I think, every job in the sheriff's office. As I've said before, I've held every position in the sheriff's office as a lieutenant, with the exception of public information officer. And then when promoted to captain, actually I had the unique opportunity to pick up actually public safety dispatch. So I was in charge of our dispatch unit, which is another section that at least the two police chiefs that are running right now, their agencies, actually we provide dispatch for both of those agencies currently. So that's the succession planning, the continuity of operations, and the continuity of government at the sheriff's office. So I'll go ahead and stop there.
Thanks, Chuck. I appreciate that. I'm going to ask you for one word. I'm going to give you, it's a two-part question. Just each of you give me one word, a yes or no, on the following question, if you will. And we're going to just do the next two questions in the same order. Keith, will you commit to purchasing and implementing body cameras in your first year as sheriff?
Yes, to the extent financially possible. Who knows what the budget's going to look like January 1st. The current sheriff has the first quarter of the budget to spend up until that time. And hopefully the current sheriff and administration will spend no more than 1/4 of that budget.
Okay, Eric, one word answer on that, yes or no?
Yes.
Okay, Chuck.
Yes.
Rich. Rich. Are you there, Rich?
Larry, you talking?
Yeah, Rich, one word
Larry,
answer.
you talking?
I am talking to you, yes.
Okay. One word answer is yes.
Okay. Okay, second part of that question, Keith, if the county commission balks at funding it, how will you acquire a body camera system?
So I apologize for the more than one word. I got excited for the question.
That's okay.
And, well, you know, the current sheriff is asking for an additional $2.4 million in the already $54 million budget. So I'm not sure how that's going to fare this year. But if we can't afford it through the commission, then we're going to have to look and see how much money is there available to it, where we can allocate it from other resources. And, you know, mind you, I'm not talking about a full-scale implementation across the board, because as much as we hate to talk about how much it's going to cost, we have to talk about how much it's going to cost, because there are many moving parts of this. You've got storage, you have redaction, you have time to make things ready for public records requests and and so forth. So when a candidate talks about money is important, it's not an excuse they're trying to make to say that they're not going to implement it. The candidate is simply trying to be responsible with tax dollars. So one consideration would be to implement it partially, like maybe go with, start with your field training program. So you have, training or tools to look at with your new officers in training, or implementing it on your SWAT team, until you can start to do it full scale. But this, I don't think, is something right now that if it's not able to be done all in 1 year, then you have a plan to do so incrementally so that the public understands it's coming.
Okay, Eric.
Larry, I tell you, I feel confident knowing the budget. I feel confident being part of the budgeting process that between grants and knowing some areas that we can make some adjustments, I feel very confident that we can find the funds to do this. This is something that we've been looking at for several years. I'm somebody who is big on technology, leveraging technology, always trying to make our agency better using technology. And I do believe that this is an item that will help both our folks and the community. And so I know that I can find money between some savings that I intend to implement in our budget because I know the budget and grants to make this happen in my first year.
Okay, Chuck.
Okay, I think those are pretty good points. As the strategic planner for the sheriff's office, part of my role was I was actually the grants manager. I drafted all the grants for the sheriff's office at that time when I worked there. And during that period of time, actually, we implemented vehicle cameras. So we went to laptop computers in the cars, and we added the vehicle camera system. So it is a process that has to happen. You're absolutely right. Can it be done in a year? Of course it can. I don't think there's any time for excuses on this. There's been enough excuses going back. Can we implement it agency-wide on the first day? We cannot. However, we can put into place to say, here's where we're going to start at. Here's the sectors we're going to put the cameras in. We're going to beta test those. We're going to look at basically for getting the working with information technology and the software programs and try to make that as painless as possible. And then I think we have to look at it within our budgeting at the sheriff's office and say that this is a priority. I think if you look at all the things going on in law enforcement right now, I think the implementation of body cameras and the commitment to saying that, okay, we're willing to have a civilian oversight to take a look at some of the issues that we've had in the past in order to fix some of that broken trust. So absolutely, we're going to have cameras. We're going to have them in the first year. And I think that certainly grants is a process by which we can do that, but we can do it through the general budget if we're not available on the grants, depending on what happens with the legislature this year. I'll stop there.
Thanks, Chuck. Rich, can you hear me? Question would be to you if the county commissioner. Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, you don't have to. All right, I got it. As the most experienced budgeter in this race, having managed 3 public safety budgets in the past and large budgets in state police, an experienced planner will not accept the possibility that there will be a no coming from commission. Rather, the experienced planner will create a plan, and that plan will consist of basically a foolproof justification for the commission, kind of painting them in a corner, if you will, that if they don't do the right thing and budget these cameras, then they're doing a disservice to the transparency of the agency. Now, on the slim possibility that my plan isn't going to work, budgeting is not voodoo science. It's very easy to find ways to move money around legally, as long as you get the approval from the CFO to find money. So finding the money isn't going to be an issue. But I'd rather than go into a situation where, like, what am I going to do if they say no? I'll just create the situation where they're just not going to say no. If you go to a group of people with a well thought out plan and tell them how you're going to fund it, even if it's incrementally, they normally give you what you need. And in this particular case, it's what they need. And I had experience with doing this. Back in 1992, I was the catalyst for putting in-car cameras in the New Jersey State Police, the 3,000 organization. And I did the plan up. And as a result, over the course of several years, they went to the camera systems that I recommended. I'm also the person who created the checks and balances in internal affairs for the review of these cameras. So once again, experience in this race really counts more than just about anything else. You don't want the person getting in there who has been involved in budgeting before, or never done a budget, or done a small budget. You need somebody that has experience and has the confidence to know that he's going to create a budget that will not get shot down by county commission, because it'll be a fair budget, and they'll see that it'll be responsible budget as well.
Thank you, Rich. I'm going to start with Eric on this, and you sort of alluded to this a minute ago. Everyone seems to be a fiscal conservative when all the people we talk to in these races. Please give up to 3 examples, no explanation needed. So please make this a concise answer of things you view as being on the chopping block in the first budget you see.
So Larry, before I get into that answer, I just want to follow up very quickly. Our sheriff's office, as Chuck said, has had in-car cameras since the 90s. I think that's critical. I think that the fact that there are other sheriff's offices in our region on the Treasure Coast that don't have, and other agencies, smaller agencies who do not have in-car cameras is critical. And I will say that under my watch, when we become the first sheriff's office with body cameras in my first year of office, we will be the first sheriff's office on the Treasure Coast with body cameras. So I just wanted to put that into perspective and make sure that's something you know about. As far as the chopping block goes, I think you guys were present at a previous forum where I mentioned, and one of the things that we've seen over the years is we've done a good job of civilianizing certain roles. You know, years ago, people who were answering the phones in dispatch were sworn law enforcement officers. And over time, we've recognized that there's a value in bringing civilians into our world and allowing them to do different jobs. And so for me, when I talk about saving money and chopping block doing things, I believe that there's a way for us to implement more civilians helping with traffic crashes and responding to certain calls that don't necessarily need a law enforcement officer there to answer questions. You know, I've talked about before in the past in my time as the major of the Bureau of Administration, that one of my goals was customer service. And so we were able to take some of our records people who were doing very simple records tasks, good jobs, very important things. But we added a component of where they're actually answering a phone. Now with COVID, everything's a little bit strange right now. But I'm very proud that under my watch as the major of the Bureau of Administration, if somebody calls into the Indian River County Sheriff's Office Monday through Friday, 9 to 5, they're able to get a live person on the phone who's able to help them out with their concerns. And for me, you know, I want to look at repurposing and finding new ways to move things around. I like that there are other governmental offices that are open until later in the evening. Our times have been until like 5 o'clock, and I'd like to see that extended for people who maybe can't make it to the sheriff's office. Obviously, assuming COVID is over and we're going back to more of a normal life. But as far as actually like chopping things, I know that there's ways to save. The main thing that I would think about is doing some civilianization of some different jobs to really save some money.
Would you like me to repeat the question?
Larry, who are you calling on?
Chuck.
Absolutely. I think that in looking at this, the budget piece, there's nothing on the chopping block. Let's be quite honest. With the budget with the sheriff's office, which, like I say, last year was in the $54 million range, which is more than $1 million a week. What you have to understand is that 85% of that budget, 85% of those dollars go to salary and benefits. You've got about 15%. Now it varies a little bit from year to year, basically on what you have, but about 15% of that is operational costs, fuels, vehicles, all the stuff we have to have for equipment, all that stuff we're bought. 85% is personnel. So if you're going to make any kind of a change at the sheriff's office, then you have to look at your staffing. That's just the honest truth. So in looking at the staffing on this, I think that to use the comparison of public safety dispatch, those are not clerks at the end of the day. I spent a year and I learned a lot in that section right there. Those folks are our very first responders. When you dial 911, when you call the sheriff's office, you don't get a deputy, you don't get a sergeant, you don't get a lieutenant, you don't get a captain, a major, or a sheriff. You get a call taker. And the call taker moves that information over to a public safety dispatcher that makes sure that that gets moved to where it needs to go. Understanding at the sheriff's office with public safety dispatch, it's not just law enforcement calls. When calls come into any of the other public safety dispatches, which Sebastian and City of Vero Beach have their own dispatch, if that happens to be an emergency call, that requires either fire or emergency or emergency rescue, then those calls are transferred again to the sheriff's office and move on from there. So in looking at this, I don't think there's a matter of anything that's on the chopping block, but I have to be honest with you. I think that everything has to have a fresh look. And that's the reason why you need a transition in sheriff. Coming from the outside saying, okay, everything can't be the highest priority. We have to have life and safety first. Life and safety units, our traffic unit, our response units, all those guys that come out, our public safety dispatches, those things we have to have. Those aren't nice to have, those are have to haves. Some of our secondary units, whether it be our special operations, whether it be some of our public outreach, those things, I think those are nice to have. And certainly if we can afford to maintain those in the current environment that we're going to have because of COVID, I think everybody understands there's a possibility that budgets are going to decrease or at least flatten. So I think you have to be willing to look at everything, put it on the table, decide, okay, here's the have to have, here's the nice to have, then decide on the nice to have, okay, can we combine those units in some way or minimize with less staffing that would allow us to actually make the budget smaller. I'll stop there.
Thanks, Chuck. Rich?
It's a public safety budget. It's shaped the same way every other public safety budget was that I've managed. Does anything really jump out at me? Yeah, maybe a couple of things. The number of helicopters kind of intrigues me a little bit, but looking at it from the outside, anybody who tells you they can do something about it right off the bat is not somebody who's experienced in budgeting whatsoever. But I guarantee there is waste because the sheriff's office recently has been very kind enough to help me answer this question. I can guarantee we're never going to pay an outside law firm to defend the sheriff's office from not following the law related to public records. And I can also guarantee that no deputy is going to be permitted to purchase camping equipment or any other personal stuff on his credit card at the taxpayer's expense. Now, is that going to knock off a whole bunch of money off a $50-some-odd million budget? No. But if that waste right there has been identified by people that really weren't even looking for it, I can't even imagine what I'll find out in the first week when we start to have our budget meeting. So I would like to be able to say, yeah, Larry, I'm going to cut this and cut that and impress everybody with my prowess related to budgeting. But again, being the most experienced budgeter here, anybody that tells you that doesn't know anything about budgeting. You have to sit down and you have to, kind of like what Chuck said, you have to look at where the waste is and where the need is. And things are going to have to be moved from one to the other. Now, clearly, you can't move capital items over into salaries and benefits, but this budget is going to take a lot of work, more than just somebody looking at it from the outside and not knowing what the real line items mean as opposed to what the line items that they're using the money for actually mean.
Thanks, Rich. Keith?
Thank you. So having budget experience, being the person who prepared the budget for review by the chief of police in Vero Beach and the city manager for multiple years, and also being responsible for the budget for this police department, I can tell you that we have to look very hard at every single account to make sure that what we are budgeting or allocating for is what we absolutely need. And we always have to focus on needs, not wants. We also have to maximize and leverage the amount of grants that we could obtain, like we've said before, with body cameras and so forth. We have to look at what other tax revenues are available to us. We know that we're going to see a decline in revenues due to COVID-19, due to gas tax, and a few other things that governments rely on. So that's going to adversely impact the sheriff's ability to negotiate for more money moving forward. Having said that, I'm going to take the more cautious route and say that there aren't any things on the chopping block right now per se, but I certainly have a lot of questions that I want to see answered from day one. Like, why do we have so many boats over there? I know the sheriff's office has acquired some through a federal program that they participate in, but they're not being utilized. And I know we have some other toys over there like side-by-sides and so forth. So what do we have this equipment for? Why have we acquired it? And what's it used for? We have to curtail spending if it's unnecessary. I also want to look deeply into an account that has over $1 million allocated for reserve officers. And it's my understanding that reserve officers don't get paid, yet there's over $1 million allocated for salaries and benefits and so forth. Am I mistaken? Is that a reserve account for other salaries, or is that for reserves? And we need to get to the bottom of those questions. We also need to figure out about, how are we allowed to go on end of year spending sprees that wind up with countless thousands of dollars in equipment and supplies and so forth purchased that comes up missing, supposedly stored, and before it can be inventoried, marked, and so forth, it comes up missing. So we have to look first at the budget process that allows for such lavish end-of-year spending to occur. And then we have to look at the security aspect that goes along with the property that is purchased. Because what do we do? What do we have here? Do we have a gross mismanagement of our tax dollars? Or do we have a serious internal theft problem at the Indian River County Sheriff's Office? And this is a well-documented incident that's been in the newspaper. And there's a lot of folks in this community that are just not satisfied with the conclusion of that investigation. And so we have to look very hard at how we budget how we plan our budget to begin with and where we allocate our dollars. But I'll go back to what I said before. I can't put my finger on exactly what's going to be cut. I'm not opposed to civilianizing some positions, but I don't like putting anybody out of a job. When I worked at the Vero Beach Police Department during the Great Recession and the city was looking at selling the power plant, every position that became vacated was eliminated. And serving over our 10 dispatchers for a period of 8 years of my career, the last few managing them when they felt like their jobs were on the chopping block for an entire year was not something I'd like to see any sheriff's employee go through in the future. So if we can civilianize, that would be great. We can save money. If we can eliminate positions and consolidate responsibilities, I think that's just being, responsible with your management and so forth. But as far as what I'm going to do away with, we're going to really have to look at that budget hard.
Thanks, Keith. I think, I've got several questions left. We don't have much time. I'm going to have to ask you to maybe limit your responses to 1 or 2 sentences at this point, because I do have a lot of questions yet left. We're going to start with Chuck on this. Please give an example of something specific you've done that has displayed your commitment to improving the lives of people who are members of groups that have been discriminated against.
I could probably start locally. Actually, the very first rally that was held in Indian River County on the backside of the George Floyd incident up in Minneapolis was held across the street from the sheriff's office, which it was interesting to me because I received an email invitation to attend and asked if I would speak and at least address questions and talk to the group. So I said absolutely that I would. As I arrived at that event, it was surprising to me that I was the only sheriff's candidate that attended that event. So what I did is basically I went up when I was called up on the front, and I stayed very short on that thing because the whole intent for me to be there was not to talk, it was to listen. So what I did is I moved throughout the crowd through the rest of that event. I took a look at all the information they had, and then on the backside of that, a couple of the groups in the Gifford community have asked me, and I've gone to their churches and I've spoken directly to the members of the Gifford community and answered questions as honestly and openly as I can. So in doing that, I think, and the other side of that would be probably the Juneteenth celebration that was June 30th this year. I don't know that for the folks that were out there, and I know Keith was there. For the folks that were out there, I mean, it was just a horrendous day. The storms were coming down from everywhere. But we did. We went and we set up at 12 o'clock noon. I spent the whole day talking to folks out there underneath a tent, trying to stay out of the rain as best we could. And then we were actually, we were asked questions. And like I say, Keith and I attended that event along with one of the other candidates. And they were pretty direct questions because they were mostly from folks that had lost family members basically in encounters with law enforcement in Indian River County. So I think the main thing you have to be able to do first is you have to show up. You have to be honest to say, okay, I'm going to come and I'm going to talk to you. Then you have to be willing to have those conversations on the backside. When people say, can you come answer the questions? I think you have to do that. If you're going to hold town hall meetings, Gifford needs a town hall meeting as well as other parts of the town. So I'll stop there.
Thanks, Chuck. Rich, I'm going to ask this question, but I'm going to have to ask you again. Please, if you can give us in a sentence or two, please give an example of something specific you've done that has displayed your commitment to improving lives of people who are members of groups that have been discriminated against. A sentence or two, please.
Years ago, as a strategic initiatives officer for the state police in New Jersey, I was assigned a task to create a program that would either prove or disprove disparate treatment towards minorities. what I did to that was something that nobody else here has done, and they would not be able to do that on the first day of work like I will be able to. I modified an existing program wherein the statistics for all motor vehicle stops were captured and race was isolated. And after that, I created a board that reviewed the data so we could sift through the stuff that was important and not important. And then once that data was sifted through, we came up with an actionable product that would tell us whether or not a trooper was possibly conducting discriminatory motor vehicle stops.
Thanks, Rich.
From there, Larry, you didn't cut Chuck off.
Okay, I think people can read this on TCPalm.com. If you want to keep going, go ahead.
Yeah. So should I have picked something that I didn't put on TCPalm, Larry?
Say it again.
That wasn't the question. This is the strongest points that I have.
Okay, go ahead.
And so after sending it to the commander looked for any anomalies and the discriminatory or non-discriminatory behavior was addressed. And from there, I assigned someone to look into motor vehicle searches, specifically negative motor vehicle searches, where a search occurred and no drugs were found, in an attempt to see if those searches were discriminatory in nature. And that's something that nobody else has done and would know how to do on the first day of work.
Thank you, Rich. So next up is Keith, in a sentence or two, please.
Right. I co-founded the Fellsmere Action Community Team in 2014. It facilitates our policing philosophy called Partner Institution Policing. It's because it's comprised of family, churches, schools, youth organization, and government. It is an award-winning philosophy according to the Police Chiefs Association, where we won the Rocky Pomerantz Excellence in Policing Award. We've won that award twice. That nonprofit specifically addresses socioeconomic issues in Fellsmere and as they apply to everyone, including minorities.
Thanks, Keith. Next is Eric.
Thanks, Larry. So prior to ever being a candidate, I attended the Gifford Cope meetings regularly and listened directly to concerns from folks in the Gifford community. I was also there for pastoral association meetings to hear the concerns from our pastors and their constituents, to hear exactly what needed to be addressed. And I'm always there and available to address those concerns. I've also been on the board of United Way, and I've served as a loaned executive for more than 6 years. And as you know, I also had a radio program where we brought in a variety of groups, especially groups that were dealing with discrimination. If we had somebody who had concerns or anything like that, we would want to bring them in to talk about that. So we had many people on over my time hosting that show.
Thanks, Eric. Hey, Rich, you're next on this one. Again, if you can try to keep it to a sentence or two, because we are running out of time. Please cite one thing you've done in the past or would plan to do if elected to ensure parents are confident their children are safe in school.
I would implement the DITEF program. It is a drug program. It stands for drug identification, drug impairment training for educated professionals. And that would help identify at-risk children who might be doing drugs at school.
Thank you. Next up is Keith.
We have to ensure the safety of our children at every school by being present there with a law enforcement officer, number one. Number two, we have to shift the paradigm that exists in our schools and with our teachers and our personnel. They have to look at every situation differently. What is your run, hide, fight plan every moment of the day so that you can help keep our kids safe while we're out there keeping you safe as well? And I think those are the primary concerns right now with the active shooter situations going on in America.
Thank you. Eric.
After Marjorie Stoneman Douglas, I personally went and met with each and every SRO and made sure that they were committed to protecting the children in our community. My son is starting school this year, and I want to ensure that not just my son, but everybody's kids are safe. one of the things that I'm committed to as your sheriff is ensuring that I meet with the SROs annually. One of the failures we saw in Marjorie Stoneman Douglas was that they didn't feel empowered to call a code red. There were teachers who didn't feel empowered to code red. I will ensure that every person who steps foot on a school campus is empowered to know that they have the ability to hit the emergency button, that we have new technology coming that's going to be an emergency button for everybody in every pocket that's inside of those schools, and that our folks are ready to respond, that they've got all the tools that they need, and that everyone's children will be safe at school.
Thank you, Chuck.
I think there's a couple of other things we can add to that. With our school resource program that we put in every school, obviously we've taken very serious in Florida in protecting our children from an active shooter scenario. The point we have to understand is that those school resource officers are in that school for more than thousands of hours a year. How are we utilizing those folks? I think the next thing we need to do is look at racial and ethnic disparity as far as arrest for our children from ages 10 to 17 in our school system. And secondarily to that, let's take a look at working with our truancy officers for the children that are falling through the cracks. If you've got a child that's gone for more than 5 days, maybe what's one of those things we should put together a strike team with our officers or our deputies along with the staff from the school to say, hey, can we intervene in this? Can we reach out to parents? Can we find out if there's a problem we can fix? Stop there.
Thanks, Chuck. We'll start with Keith on this one. It's a two-part question, but again, if you can keep it concise. The bigger question is, how would your office be transparent? That's the first question. The second, more specific question is, please address your commitment to keeping general dispatch calls public as they have been traditionally.
So I heard the first question, Larry. How will I keep the office transparent? I did not hear your second question. Your garble.
Thanks. The second one is, more specifically, can you commit to keeping general dispatch calls public as they have been traditionally?
So the answer to the second question is yes, absolutely. Calls for service are public record, and we should do that. And if it's an active investigation, obviously we can't share certain details. As far as being transparent, I first must be transparent myself, and I must set the example on transparency. So it starts with me, the sheriff of Indian River County. Our policies and procedures must also reflect our transparency. We've got to respond to public records requests as quickly as possible, and not hire outside consultants to do that for us. People can be trained to do that. I've had the training myself. As far as the rest of that goes, having community interactions with people, meetings, answering questions, being accessible, returning phone calls, returning emails, being there for the community as much as you can throughout the course of your workday.
Thank you. Eric?
The question for me?
Question was, one, how would your office be transparent? And the second part is, please address your commitment to keeping general dispatch calls public as they have been traditionally.
Okay, on the dispatch section, you're talking about the newspaper being able to obtain dispatch calls that are happening. Is that what you're looking for, Larry?
Yeah, there's a police scanner, and maybe that was the term I should have used before. But yeah, making sure the scanner is available.
I can tell you that one of our concerns is officer safety. And I know that there's been a discussion on the Treasure Coast about the ability to scan our radios. And in 2020, people listen to our radios. They put information on social media before we're even able to respond to calls. And officer safety is paramount for me. So I can't sit here and commit to you that you're going to be able to hear in real time, the Indian River County Sheriff's Office dispatch channel for the future, because I just don't think that that's safe for our employees, nor do I think it's safe for the general public. As far as transparency goes, I will tell you that me personally, everything I do is an open book. Anything that anybody wants to know about me, I will always answer questions. I'm available to the public, and I am committed to our agency being transparent as well. There's been a lot of false information that has been shared both on social media, the internet, and here today about public records in the Indian River County Sheriff's Office, and I would encourage anybody who's interested in that to look further into those issues and find out the truth.
Thanks, Chuck.
When it comes to public records, let's touch the public records and the transparency first. There's best practices. We're an accredited agency at the Indian River County Sheriff's Office. We're nationally accredited in law enforcement. We're nationally accredited in communications through our 911 dispatch center. We're also accredited through our jail. So we have a lot of best practices that are put out there, but the problem is that some of the folks at the command level may not be following those best practices. So having a policy alone is not the right answer. I think that coming back to, this is a leadership issue with the Indian River County Sheriff's Office, and that's the piece we have to look at. We have to look at right now that there's a culture at the Sheriff's Office that says we don't have to give you information. There's a culture at the Sheriff's Office that says, okay, we're going to provide this information to certain media outlets, and the other ones are just going to have to come find it because we don't have a good relationship with us. Both of those have to end. I think that we have to be P25 compliant with the transitions that's made as public safety dispatch, and whether or not those frequencies are going to maintain unscrambled. That's really at a decision at the state level right now, since we've run to that level of compliance. But as far as working with the media, I think that we can't favor one section of the media over another section. I think that whatever we make available to one, we have to make available to all. And I think that a lot of times we're better off maybe to put some of this out basically directly instead of making people come find it. I'll stop there. I know we're short on time.
Chuck. Rich?
Regarding the transparency issue, Sheriff's Office has a policy on the release of public records. You just don't follow it as far as I'm concerned. And I think a good message to send on the first day would be to share and ask the memo that was generated by a major who required that any time a public records request came in about him, he was to be notified before it got sent back out. It's contrary to the provisions of that law, and that's not transparent. So transparency problems as far as the policy is solid. They just have to follow the policy. It's going to be a change for them. It's going to be a culture shift, but that's going to be an easy one. Now, the second one, Larry, could you repeat that one for me? You were kind of garbled when I heard it the first couple of times.
I will, yes. Please address your commitment to keeping general dispatch calls public as they have been traditionally, and that's the the scanner would be the best way to describe that. And then I'll give Keith a chance to answer just the scanner after that.
You didn't answer it the first time, Larry?
No, he just didn't I didn't ask the question specifically.
All right. So, Larry, let me put this into perspective. I can go on my computer right now and I can listen to every call coming out of the south side of Chicago. And that's been going on for years. It's one of my favorite channels to listen to. There's no outcry to stop that openness regarding calls. There's no way in the world I'm gonna end that policy. It's gonna stay in place.
Thanks, Rich. Keith, did you? I maybe didn't ask the question as clearly the first time. So,
right.
Would you address the scanner?
So I'm understanding it to mean that you want continued access to sheriff's calls for service via scanner. Is that what I'm hearing?
Yes.
And you're the only ones who have access to it. It's the media.
I'm just asking whether it will continue to be open.
Yeah, well, if it's open to the media, I have no problem with that. But I do err on the side of officer safety always. I mean, we certainly don't want folks scanning our frequencies in real time where they can show up on calls for service and be disruptive to those calls, endanger the officer's safety, divide the officer's attention, make a simple traffic stop for an infraction turn into being something monumental when it shouldn't be. There's a lot of fear out there right now with police actions and so forth, and I think we all just need to dial things back a little bit and understand that the vast majority of police officers in America and in Indian River County are good people who work hard, who are going to protect your rights, and they're going to do a good job doing it. So I do err on the side of officer safety.
Thank you. Let's see. Next up, anybody? Adam, you have any questions?
No, Larry, I think you asked all our questions.
Okay. Gil? No. Louise? Terry?
No questions here. Appreciate the guys taking time.
Eric, did you want to say something? Can you unmute Eric for a second? Thank
you.
Yeah,
I just wanted to mention, we recognize TCPalm and many of our other partners as reputable media. And I think it's important in 2020, especially with the narrative that's happened across our country with fake news, that we address what it means to be media in America in 2020. And so I have no problem responding to reputable media, but I want to make sure that we understand that not every person with a blog constitutes media.
Thank you, Eric. I have one more question, and then I'd like to give you maybe a minute to summarize. So I'll ask this final question. and then we'll give you a minute to summarize after that. Thank you for taking the time. So again, please a concise answer. Please rate the drug problem in the community from a 1, which is not a problem, to a 10, a serious problem. Please cite one specific thing you have done in the past to help fix it, and a second specific thing you would do if elected. We'll start off with Eric on that.
Very good. From my perspective, rating the drug problem, I would say we're about a 6. We have not seen the overdoses that other counties to the south of us have seen. We do have our own opioid problem. Our folks do deploy Narcan about twice a month here in Indian River County, but we're not nearly every day like other counties to the south of us are. As far as my personal role, I was in our undercover drug unit for 6 years. I spent an entire year on a wiretap for a pill mill investigation. We took down prescription pill clinics, opioid clinics back between 2010 and 2012, before this was ever on anybody else's radar. I'm committed to keeping our community drug-free. I'm committed to keeping our community safe and keeping the drugs out of the hands of the youth in our community.
Thanks, Eric. Chuck?
I would probably go with a 6 as well with Eric. I don't disagree with that. I think that there's certainly communities around us that are worse. I think what I've done in the past basically is not worked at that drug unit, the multi-agency drug unit. I was actually the director of that drug unit. I answered to the sheriff of Indian River County, as well as both chiefs of police. I think what I will do is try to work with those folks that we can reorganize that unit so that we can, as we're looking at cost-saving measures, instead of each one of our agencies working on their own, if we can have a collaborative effort or a common operating picture with a unit that works with those agencies that are willing to put, even if the smaller agencies aren't able to put a full-time officer in there, maybe even just a part-time, and try to reorganize that basically so that we have a multi-agency approach, and then we can hit those because we all have the same problems. We shouldn't be dealing with them individually.
Sounds good. Rich?
Yeah, Larry, my experience in narcotics enforcement dates back 38 years. I've been considered an expert at the national level and the most sought after instructor by DEA for years. And looking at the drug issue in Indian River County, I can honestly say that I don't want to put a number on it, but comparatively, it is not as bad as other places. But the tidal wave is coming, and that is a quote from an article that I wrote, because one of the things, again, that distinguishes me from other people is I'm a published author on several different subjects. The tidal wave is coming. We don't start to create a plan to address that, we're going to find ourselves over our head and unable to stem the tide of the opioid crisis and the other drugs that are coming in. And what I'll do is exactly what I've done in the past. I'll create a positive, actionable plan to stem the tide of opioid abuse in the county.
Thank you, Rich. Keith?
So I would also categorize the drug problem as a 6. And what I've done throughout my career, having served as a K-19 trainer and handler, being on the forefront of the drug war, if you will, in the 90s with traffic stops and interdiction throughout Indian River County, rising up through the ranks, investigating drug cases, approving search warrants, participating in the service of search warrants, conducting control buys, and so forth. And then as the administrative chief executive officer of a law enforcement organization, supervising all criminal investigations and especially drug investigations within our city, so those are the things that I've done, well versed in those things. So the second one is the one thing I've done, what I will do is continue to enforce the law, continue to approach this from an education and enforcement standpoint. We have got to continue to force out information that will hopefully prevent drug use and abuse. We've got to continue to do successful programs. I like the DITEP program as well. It starts with DARE in the 5th grade, but we've got to have good relationships with parents and in our schools to help recognize the signs and symptoms so we can prevent those problems early on. And we've also have to recognize that a lot of the drug use we see now is a behavioral health problem, and we have to approach that from a sentencing standpoint as well, so we can divert people out of the beds in our prisons and try to get them into some programs so they don't continue to come into that revolving door. I've seen it work through drug court, and I know we can be successful moving forward.
Thank you, Keith. We'll start with Chuck. Again, appreciate your guys' participation today. If you could there's something we missed, or if there's just something you want to say at the end here, we'd like to hear it. If you could keep it to a minute, that would be great.
Okay. And a final for this, basically, the sheriff's office is not a police department. There's only 2 people in this race that have any experience at the Indian River County Sheriff's Office. That's myself and Eric. That's the honest truth. In looking at the sheriff's office, we have about 300 sworn positions. More than half of those sworn positions are corrections. So, and I'd like to say, not to pick on Deborah Cooney because she's not here, but at the end of the day, short of being elected sheriff, she wouldn't be qualified to fill a single one of those 300 positions. So breaking that 300 down, knowing that corrections is the larger half of the 2, the only candidate in this race that's actually certified, at least basically certified as a corrections officer and a law enforcement officer is myself. I believe that Indian River County wants a few simple things. And I'm going to tell you what I believe that they are. I think they want a sheriff that will honor their oath of office. I think they want a sheriff that will make the tough decisions. I think they want a sheriff that will stand by their words. Basically, that it's the same thing before the election as it is after the election. I think they want a sheriff that accepts responsibility personally for things that go wrong, the things that are broken. I think they want a sheriff that's humble and willing to listen to people that need our protection and hold those accountable who fall short. So I'll end right there. Thanks, Mark.
Thank you, Chuck. Rich.
This race is really important for a lot of reasons, but I think the main reason is that we're losing a 12-year sheriff. It doesn't matter whether you agree or disagree with anything that Darrell didn't do. He's a 12-year sheriff with well over 30 years experience. And when that experience goes out the door, what are we left with? And so as far as I'm concerned, I think the voters are, and as far as experience goes, there isn't anybody in this race that has the same experience or anywhere near the same experience as far as law enforcement activities go that I have. 38 years, been in charge of 3 different departments, multiple budgets. I've been in command positions in a 3,000-member organization that nobody in this race could ever possibly hold because the positions don't exist in sheriff's office or a small town police department. At the end of the day, you vote for who you're going to vote for, but why would you accept the person who is least experienced when you have the person who's most experienced sitting right in front of you? So that's all I have to say. The most experienced person in the race is me. I think it's an argument. Thank you.
Thanks, Rich. I appreciate it. And thank you very much for hanging on the phone here due to the technical difficulties. Okay, next up would be Keith.
The voters are going to determine who is the most qualified candidate for sheriff. And a history lesson shows that in 1992, we elected a small business owner who had 4 years of small town policing in the state of New York, and he served 2 terms. In 2008, we elected a highway patrol captain, no fiduciary control, over 25 to 30 troopers at his post down at Fort Pierce. Very centralized organization. A lot of orders come down from Tallahassee. Primary role is enforce traffic law and investigate traffic crashes. And he has served 3 terms. The voters will determine who is the most qualified. And who is the most qualified is the one who they feel has the best vision, the one that's going to be able to collaborate the best in this community to make sure that we deal with our differences, we protect the public, maintain the public trust while we fight crime and we make everyone feel safe. We've got a lot of things coming down our way with criminal justice reform. I think it's important that people look at someone who's been a chief executive officer, one who's already the chief top cop of their organization, one who's been in the saddle, one who's made those tough decisions, not one who's been preparing to make those decisions, but one who has made those decisions. And leadership, ladies and gentlemen, is about influence and how you positively influence people to maintain their motivation and their drive to work, how you value them, how you make them give a sense of purpose, a sense of belonging, and how you develop them, how you elevate them, how you make sure that they understand that you are, in fact, the greatest asset. How you do that, how you influence people to work. You don't need to have worked in a jail to do that. You don't need to have worked in all these other assignments and be part of a sheriff's office culture to come in there and do what needs to be done. And that's to right that ship that's currently listing and off course, to get it back on course, to make people feel proud of who they are again, because a lot of them don't right now. They need to know that there is fair, impartial, and consistent leadership at the helm who's going to make sure that every single one of them has an opportunity. Because, ladies and gentlemen, what's happened over there is the cardinal sin of leadership has been committed. They've had their hope taken from them. And we need to restore that hope if we're going to accomplish those three things that I talked about in the very beginning: constitutional rights, maintain the public trust, and protecting our community from harm. And thank you all for this opportunity, for being here. And please check me out at votetouchberryforsheriff.com.
Thanks, Keith. Eric, you get the final word.
Awesome, guys. Hey, thank you so much to the editorial board for hosting this. Certainly appreciate you taking the time out of your day to hear from each and every one of us and to make your decision. I just want to say that my goal here is to be the sheriff for everyone. I set off on this journey years ago. I knew that I would be here running for sheriff of Indian River County. I love Indian River County. I can't wait for every day to wake up and go in and serve the citizens of Indian River County. I grew up here. I went to Sebastian River High School. I know how special our community is. And my goal as sheriff is to ensure that every single citizen recognizes that, appreciates it, and has a safe environment for their family to grow and prosper. And we have a special little slice of heaven here. And I want to ensure that our law enforcement is a big part of that and that people appreciate it. I'm proud of the men and women of the Indian River County Sheriff's Office. I'm proud of the things that we accomplished. And I think the majority of our community is proud of us as well. We put out that video within 12 hours of the shooting at Walmart, and we had thousands upon thousands of positive feedback, comments on Facebook, email, food being delivered. And we're certainly proud of the job that our men and women do every single day out there to protect our community. We've done that experiment before where we've had a chief executive come from the outside and it works, but it doesn't work as well as it could if you took somebody who has the experience, who's worked on the inside and can start on day one like I can. So certainly I appreciate your time and thank you for doing this.
So thank you for taking the time today. It was a long hour, but I appreciate it. An hour and 20 minutes, it looks like. Thanks for hanging in there again, Rich, on the technical difficulties. You can read more about the sheriff's race and other races at tcpalm.com/elections. And once again, thank you guys for putting your names out there, for getting in the public eye, for handling all the tough calls, for handling all the tough questions. And people have, this is an important job. And thank you for being part of it. And we'll catch you next time. Thank you.